Welcome again. My name is Catherine Skolnicki, and I am a member of the working group of Onwards. Glad to see you all here who are with us in person, and if you're watching the recording, thanks for tuning in. Just briefly to introduce Onwards, if you're not familiar, we're a collaborative effort of civil society groups that support at-risk scholars, artists, writers, journalists, and activists. We support people who are sort of in the transition period, maybe have come to the US on a fellowship or a particular type of scholar academic-based visa and are looking for the next steps of how to continue your work in the United States. So today we're very excited to welcome back Kelly Olshan of NYFA, New York Foundation of the Arts, on a workshop about writing an artist statement. We also have Yayun Tang with us from NYFA, so thank you for being with us as well. Into the workshop, I just want to mention a few things. One, that our session will be recorded, but if you have a conversation in a breakout group, that will not be recorded. And there will be a time for questions at the end. If you prefer to not have your video on for that reason, if you want to ask a question, you can turn your video off, or you can write question in the chat or in the Q&A part. But Kelly will go into more detail about all of that. We will have an Onwards meetup on April 10th. That will be with Afghan filmmaker Sara Karimi, and that will be in Persian. We also have an upcoming session on April 24th, which is for the whole Onwards community to come together and talk about recent changes in US population, university funding, and free speech and democracy. We'll have more on that on our website as well. And on May 8th, we'll have a workshop about translating your work with Elizabeth Jacquette. And Elizabeth is the executive director of Words Without Borders and also a translator herself. You can always find more resources on our website, onwardsproject.org. We have information about immigration resources, job seeking, fellowships, etc. So please feel free to go on, and we'll add that link in the chat as well. Yeah, without further ado, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate the introduction, Catherine and John at Onwards. If you're here for writing an artist statement, you are in the right place. Whether you're, a practicing artist or you're just thinking about writing about the work that you do creatively more generally, this workshop is for you. So, if you are not familiar with New York Foundation for the Arts, or NYFA for short, we exist to empower individual artists, arts organizations, essentially creative people and cultural workers of all stripes. We do that through 4 primary programs. We have a professional development program that offers skills, resources, connection, and community, including workshops on topics that can support your practice, which is what we're doing now. Within that, I really want to particularly flag that we have an immigrant artist program that is run by my colleague, Yayun Ting. Yayun can put some information about that in the chat and welcome you all to check it out, as it has resources, a mentorship program, a newsletter. Is really thoughtfully run by my colleague who can answer any questions you have. We also issue grants and awards or funding to artists. We have a fiscal sponsorship program that's a fundraising tool, and we're well known for our classifieds board, which is the largest job board in the arts in the country, along with other online resources. I also just wanted to take this chance to mention that, we acknowledge that we're in a really difficult and uncertain time politically, as it relates to the way this country supports and does not support immigrants. And, at NYFA, we believe in the value of immigrants' contributions and immigrant artist contributions. And that's why we have an immigrant artist program and we'll continue to have an immigrant artist program. So, we're thinking about you in this time, and hope that this program can, offer an opportunity to be among like-minded people and build community among fellow artists and immigrant artists. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my background, introduce myself, and then I would love to get to know you all a little bit. So as Catherine mentioned at the outset, my name is Kelly Olshan. I work for NYFA as a program officer in professional development, which essentially means that I get to work with and serve artists, creative people of all disciplines throughout the state, the city, and even globally. And I'm also an artist, so I really understand how challenging and exciting this career can be. I have written and rewritten my own artist statement a million times and struggled with it, so I really understand what that's like. And professionally, so I run a host of programs that support individual artists, such as these workshops, one-on-one NYFA coaching and consulting program, and our Artists as Entrepreneur program, which is a 3.5-day professional development program for artists. And most relevant for this topic, I read hundreds of artist statements a year as a NYFA coach, as a reviewer, as a panelist. And so I really am here to kind of pass on advice as to ways to craft our artist statement and ways that, tips we have for it to procure the opportunities that you envision in the arts. So I wanted to open with this slide because acknowledge that writing an artist statement is hard. I have struggled with it myself, and I literally teach this workshop. So it's a challenging thing, but hopefully this workshop, we're gonna break it down in a simple way. And so I would love to get to know you all a little bit. We have a small group, so if you're comfortable coming off camera and introducing yourself verbally, welcome you to do so. Otherwise, you can put your answers in the chat, but would love to hear, your name, your pronouns, your discipline, where you're calling from, and perhaps one challenge or question that you've had about writing an artist statement. Any volunteers to introduce yourself?
Hello,
Hello.
can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, my name is Bertoni Louis, and I am a Haitian poet. I am currently a scholar at risk fellow at the Orchin Center, Harvard Scholar at Risk Fellowship. So I have my mentor, Jane Unruh. I don't know if you know her. Yeah, I'm from Haiti, and I am currently living in Cambridge.
Great. Like near Boston?
Yes, yes, Boston.
Excellent. And what is one challenge that you have run into writing an artist statement or a question you have?
So I always struggle to write the perfect artist statement because I don't know what exactly to write in order to excite the reviewer. Yeah.
Great. What do we write? What are reviewers looking for? Great question. We're definitely going to get into that. I'm gonna invite anyone else if you have a question about writing an artist statement or there's a challenge you've run into, please feel free to come off mute or put that in the chat.
Yeah, so I would like to know if I have to write an introduction, or what is the most important part of the artist statement?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
We're definitely gonna get into that.
So some tips and tricks to write a perfect artist statement.
Mhm. Great.
Mhm.
Okay. Last call for any other burning questions before I move on. right. I'm going to keep moving, but if questions come up, feel free to put those in the chat. All right. So what are we going to do in this workshop? Excuse me. We are going to discuss the fundamental elements of an artist statement. So definitely getting to that question about what should go in it, what are reviewers looking for. We're going to work through some interactive exercises. I want you all to leave not only having a sense of what the artist statement should include, but with materials that you could take away to actually start writing the thing. So you feel like you don't have to do it alone, but we're going to tackle it together. Then I'm going to cover some primary do's and don'ts and show you some real examples of successful artist statements that have impressed panelists, as I think that it's helpful to talk through this thing as an example. So as a heads up, I'm going to talk for a little bit. We're then going to give you the option to talk with one another individually, and then we'll come back as a group. So just putting that as a heads up so you know that it's coming. All right. So I'm going to talk about, by way of introduction, the key elements of an artist statement. And the first thing that I like to do is discuss first, why is this thing important? Why are we even having this workshop that emphasizes creating this thing? And this is somewhat US specific, but really more global, and that many arts opportunities ask for this, and they weigh your artist statement in deciding who to give an opportunity. And so specifically, you're applying for a fellowship, a grant, an artist residency, an exhibition. You're pretty much always going to be asked for this artist statement. And so beyond that, it's also a tool to help people understand your work, to bring people closer to your work. And to give an example here, I want to share that I was recently on a review panel to award a solo show in New York City. And as a reviewer, I was asked, how well does this work fit our theme? And for people who didn't really share an artist statement, or their artist statement didn't say much, as a reviewer, I wasn't able to score them very highly on how well their work relates to the theme. Maybe I love the work. Maybe I saw the work and I was like, oh, I can see this fitting the theme. But to be a fair reviewer, if there was nothing in the artist statement that spoke to that, I couldn't give it a higher score. So this is just an example to kind of underscore why an artist statement can help communicate why you might be a good fit for an opportunity, or help you get the opportunity. So now I want to talk a little bit about what an artist statement is not, as one of the most common mistakes that we see is people confusing an artist statement and a bio. So an artist statement, broadly speaking, is about your work, whereas your bio is about you. It's about your career. Okay. And so to elaborate on that, the artist statement is where you give all of the color and interest and detail about your work, what it looks like, what it sounds like, what it feels like, formal elements, as well as its concept. Whereas your bio is where you're sharing just fact-based stuff that would probably go in a resume or a CV, but in a paragraph narrative form, right? And so the artist statement, can include what you're making, why you're making it, and how you're making it, which I'm going to elaborate on throughout the next hour and a half. And we recommend that it's actually pretty short, like about a paragraph up to roughly 100 words. So the reason why is that people have short attention spans, and research shows that roughly at about the 75 word count, people's attention starts to wane, which is not to say there isn't value in writing more about your work, but in the context of these applications, of these opportunities, you are likely going to be one of dozens or even hundreds of applications. And so if you can communicate your ideas really effectively and in a brief way, that's a strong artist statement. You will not be, that is something in your favor. Artist statements are typically written in the first person, meaning I utilize painting to as opposed to Kelly Olshan, because the idea is that it's written in your voice as an artist. So in contrast to the bio, which might include things like your education, your exhibitions, awards, any kind of professional accomplishments you have, that goes in the bio. The bio can be a little bit longer, and you can write that in third person. So Kelly Olshan graduated from blah, blah, blah. Okay. So now I want to look at an example. This is a real example of an artist that NYFA has awarded funds. And I'm going to ask my colleague to read it aloud. And as she does, I'm asking you all, is this an artist statement or a bio? And so please, take your guess on it and put your answer in the chat. So Yayun, take it away.
Okay. Jack Arthur Wood Jr. is a visual artist and educator, currently based in Queens, New York. He works as an educator throughout the 5 boroughs with organizations that provide arts education to underserved communities. Wood has been an artist in residency at the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture and printmaking and education fellow at the WASC Project Artist Residency. In 2024, he was awarded a NYFA Fellowship in Painting. Wood studied printmaking at Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina, receiving a Bachelor of Arts degree in printmaking in 2021, and was granted a Master of Fine Arts degree in printmaking from Texas A&M University in 2017.
Beautiful. Thank you, Yayun. All right, tell us in the chat, is this an artist statement or a bio? Okay, a couple votes for bio. All right, third vote for bio. Yes, this is a bio, because there's nothing about the work there, right? It's all where you went to school, what you do, residencies, etc. And so I want to take this moment to underscore why it would hurt you if you gave us a bio instead of an artist statement. Like if I ask you for an artist statement and you just tell me all about your career or facts, then that does your work a disservice, because then we don't get to understand and really dive into your work. So this is, my announcement, my public service announcement to reserve the artist statement to focus really on your work. Okay, so what should an artist statement include? As I mentioned before, really an artist statement can just answer 4 simple questions. And that is, who are you? This can be very brief because most of it's going in the bio, right? What do you make? How do you make it? And why do you make it? Okay, so I'm going to talk you through these things and we're going to unpack them. And to help you do that, we're going to use a worksheet that Yayun is kindly going to put in the chat so you can follow along and even take notes if you'd like. So I'm going to break down these 4 components, starting with the simplest one, which is, who are you? In the context of the artist statement, this can be so simple. Like, I'm a New York-based visual artist. Just enough for us to get a sense of who you are, what you make, broad strokes. As I said, most of it will go in the bio. So it could be New York-based visual artist, or, we heard an intro from, forgive me for getting your name, but, I am a Haitian American poet. Great. That's all you need to know. All right. So what do you make? So this is really where you describe what is going on in your work. And this could be in really sensory and concrete terms. Tell us what your creative practice results in, because it's not something that we would know unless you contextualize it. So by that, I mean, are you making large-scale paintings? Are you creating one-woman shows? Are you composing for a quartet? Just tell us, what is the outcome of your creative practice? And it might be multiple things, and that's okay, and you can list them. So this is broken down a little bit by discipline. So for those of you who are working in like visual arts or media, so moving image, you can ask yourself, what do you see or you hear in your work? For performing artists, so theater, dancers, musicians, what's happening in your performance? What is the experience like for someone in the audience? And then for literary artists, like our poet here, what is happening in your writing? If there's a story, what is it about? Um, and alternatively, you could just describe what's taking place in the prose or the verse. If there's a narrative, or even in terms of like the way the sentences are constructed, are they long? Are they short? Is there lots of descriptive language? Is it plot based? Is it dialogue based? Just really getting into the fun, nitty gritty components of what your work is like. How you make it is all about process. So for the visual artist here, it's about the materials and the techniques that you're using. If I were answering this question as I'm a visual artist, I might talk about the way that I'm painting, or that I'm using an airbrush to create kind of layers of imagery. For performing artists, it's interesting to hear like what circumstances or settings do you need to tell your story. So, for example, if you are creating a musical theater work, you might need, a certain types of sets, or it's an hour and a half production, and you need certain types of singers or performers. Like all of that stuff is really helpful for context and for the reviewer, so that we understand what your work results in, how it's made, and what's even needed to make the work possible. And then for the writers, I understand that this question might be a little bit harder for writers, because you're like, I just typed the thing. What do you mean? How do I make it? But I think here you could talk a little bit about like how you would describe the writing style and the language, like or even if there's some sort of like research component that you need to do to, even if it's fiction, doing research into certain eras or communities or ideas in order to inform your work, like anything that's important for us to know about the way that you're making the thing. Okay. The last question, why do you make it? I personally find the hardest to answer as an artist, because it's kind of asking you to be like, why do you make art? Which can be hard, an existential question to answer. So if you find this one a little bit more challenging, you are not alone, and have some ideas to kind of help you tackle that a little bit later. But broadly speaking, what you want to speak to here is your concept, or what is it that's driving you to make work? And so different people can answer this in different ways, but some food for thought to help you answer this question might be, why are you compelled to make this work? Or even if you're looking at the body of work that you're making, or even all of the work you're making, are there certain themes or ideas or trends that emerge? That can be really helpful to think about. Okay, here's the body of work I've made. What are commonalities that are coming up here? So for example, I worked with a choreographer, and we looked at, her body of work, and the things that kept coming up were about, women's issues and the things that, women face in terms of, um, like misogyny in the workplace, or even the things that our bodies go through. And so that's just an example of like looking at your body of work and being like, okay, what are the things that I seem to be interested in that keep coming up? And yeah, we'll dive into this more. But this yeah, just to consider like the ideas, the theme, the driving force. Okay, so once you answer these 4 questions, the idea is to put it all together. And so then you can start to combine your who, what, how, and why into a paragraph. The order does not matter, but when it comes all together, it should be about 100 words. So I want to give you all an example, because I think that we can talk about this in theory, but I personally find it so much easier and more concrete to see a successful example. And also, even though we're in a creative field, some of these things just kind of have a standard format in the industry. And I find it helpful to see examples of that, so you understand, okay, this is typically what people expect when they ask for an artist statement. So I'm going to show you a real example of an artist statement. This is an artist that has received our NYFA Fellowship Award, which is a very competitive, prestigious award. She is, I think, worth mentioning, self-taught. This is an immigrant artist whose first language is not English. And so I want to highlight this as someone who, you know, you don't necessarily have to be super comfortable writing in English to write a great artist statement, that it's about communicating the ideas. Without further ado, I'll show you her artist statement. And I might ask you know what, I can read it aloud actually. So I'll read it aloud. And as I'm reading, I would love for you all to look for where is the who, where is the what, the why, and the how. Okay? I am a multimedia artist whose work explores the relationship between tradition, craft, and everyday rituals of work. Through research, experimentation, and labor-intensive processes, I investigate themes of material culture and sustainability. My practice examines the disappearing traditions and daily activities of small, secluded communities around the world. My installations incorporate textile technologies, felting, dyeing, and stitching to create large-scale works and interactive pieces that are part textile, part painting, and part animal. The work's materiality is foregrounded, while it also assumes a lifelike presence within the space. By collaborating with local farmers to source materials locally, my projects draw attention to the importance of traditions in an age of mass production in the global economy. Okay. In the chat or off mute, where does this person say who she is? Where's the who? Yeah, multimedia artist. That's it. Super simple. All right, where is the what? Like, what is this person making? What does the artistic process result in? Welcome the Onwards team to chime in too. Yep. Relationship between, sure. I think that for me, it's in this okay, I'll give away my practice installations. Yep. Yeah. So I'm gonna go ahead a little bit. So color coded this, right? So I am a multimedia artist is the who. To me, the what is what you all just said. Like my installation incorporate textile techniques, felting, dyeing, etc. Right? They're part textile, they're part painting, they're part animal. That's all what this thing looks like. It also gives me an idea of what the work looks like, which is so important. For reasons we'll talk about later. But I love it when artist statements they give me a vision of what the work is like, and it makes sense with the work. Okay, so for the how, this is, you know, I'm researching, I'm experimenting, I'm using labor-intensive processes, I'm collaborating with local farmers to source materials. That tells me like what the process looks like or what's needed for this person to make their work. And then the why is kind of interspersed throughout. I think someone mentioned like the relationship. Um, you know, yeah, that could be like relationship between tradition, craft, everyday rituals. And I think the heart of the why here is about like investigating themes of material culture and sustainability, an interest in highlighting disappearing traditions and daily activities of small secluded communities around the world. And then this last sentence about the importance of traditions in an age of mass production in the global economy. Okay. So here, as you can see, the order doesn't matter. You can kind of write and rearrange as it makes sense to you, but just like hitting the key points. So one thing I love about this artist statement, as I said, is I read it and I have a sense generally of what the work looks like. It's not exact, but I have a sense that, okay, it's textile, there's felting and dyeing, it's kind of part animal, so she's clearly using materials from the sheep. Um, and so it gives me a sense. And so as a reviewer, if I read the statement first and then I look at the work, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. So imagine the inverse for a second. Like imagine this person was talking about like, I don't know, like small scale paintings. And then you see this, you're confused, right? Because the two don't go together. So one characteristic of a really strong artist statement is that it goes beautifully with the work. All right. Next, If you all are up for it, I would love to do kind of a practice round where we go through this process, but we do it for someone else's work because it is so much harder to write about your own work than it is someone else's. And I find in working with artists, you all have the language, you have the skills to do this. It's just harder when you try to do it for your own work because you're so close to it. So I want to kind of model and talk through the process with you all in a low stakes setting. So that then, you can take those skills and run with them. So I think just for simplicity and choose of time, let's do a visual arts example, though this process can be replicated regardless of your discipline. So I want to show one of my favorite paintings. This is Edward Hopper, Rooms by the Sea, and go through a bit of an exercise with you all. So I'm going to ask you to first and put your answer in the chat, or you can come off mute. First, tell me, what do you see in this image? Can you describe it? Hey, Yayun says, a doorway with light coming in, looking out at the sea. Yeah, absolutely. It's a painting. Yep, great. Okay, so next, how do you think this artwork was made? And feel free um, to just guess or make things up. We know it's a painting. Um, yeah, anything else about, how we think this might have been constructed? Simon says, you see the sea here. Yeah, and it's obviously painted. You can tell that it's painted because you can see brushstrokes in here, right? There's an attention to light, and the way that this is coming in here. It's a little bit of kind of abstraction of forms. And then lastly, why might you, as a viewer, be drawn to this image? What does it make you think or feel? A sense of freedom. Yeah. A feeling of light and space. Great. Artistic impact. Simon, I'd like to hear you talk more about that. It's peaceful and meditative. Yeah. So great. You all really populated the key elements here. So if we were writing an artist statement for this piece, or imagine there's a whole body of work that looks like this, you could say something like, you know, my paintings employ or reference um, seascapes and waterscapes, often leaving portals or doors open to a space, evoking a feeling of calm and meditation, mystery, that the sea is right outside the door. This is all great. Um, where you're thinking about what's literally happening in this painting, what you're seeing visually, the light, the sea, the doorway, and then the underlying feeling, concept, or emotion, such as, the meditation, the sense of calm, the desire to escape, the kind of doorway to another place. All of that is great. So I want you to kind of hold on to that and think about that as you go through this process for yourselves, or more specifically, each other. Which brings me to an exercise. So we're going to use the building blocks and ask you to apply them for yourselves. And specifically, I'm going to put everybody in pairs. So this was an exercise in pair writing. And so similarly, it's easier to talk about or write about someone else's work than your own. So we're going to put you in pairs for that reason. And so in a couple moments, after I explain the exercise, my colleague Yaoyun is going to put you in pairs, so in breakout rooms on one-on-one. And in pairs, you're going to ask each other, who are you? What do you make? How do you make it? And why do you make it? And in terms of the process, you'll have 16 minutes together total, or 8 minutes each. And so once you get into the breakout rooms, let's say Yayun and I are partners. So we'll decide who will go first. Let's say I go first as the speaker. I'll introduce myself, and we asked you all to bring an example of your work. So if you have that handy, this is a good time to grab it. So I'll introduce myself. I'll have that example of my work ready. Um, and then Yayun, or my partner, the listener, will then ask these questions. Yayun will ask me who I am. I'll answer what I make, what I answer, etc. And as I'm talking, as the artist, the speaker, all I have to do is talk. And Yayun, my partner, is going to take notes. She's going to listen to me talk about what I make, how I make it, and she's going to take some notes in a handout that we'll put in the chat. Um, and so as you're listening, you are writing down any compelling phrases that you hear your partner say. And if something isn't clear, you're going to ask clarifying questions like, oh, what do you mean by this? Or that's interesting. Tell me more. And you'll take notes. And then when you hit the 8-minute mark, we'll send you a message and ask you to switch. And you'll do the same thing, but for your partner. And also want to mention that the breakout rooms will not be recorded or shared, and so you'll have total privacy. Are there any questions about this process? Okay. Great. So Yayun's going to open breakout rooms momentarily. You'll have 16 minutes together total, and we'll see you in a little bit. Thank you all for sharing. Really appreciate it. I'm going to keep moving here. So I want to leave you, or rather introduce a few writing exercises that might be helpful for you to kind of do on your own time, depending on kind of if you ran into any sort of issues or things that can help you kind of generate some language for your artist statement or a purpose statement. So the first one we just did, and that's find a friend and pair up and ask each other clarifying questions about why you make the work, taking notes as the other person talks. The reason that we do this is it's often easier to write about someone else's work than it is our own. And it's often easier to speak first than it is to talk. And that communication theory says that, first we're thinking it, and then the next step is to speak it, and then the next step is to write it. So sometimes if you go from the thinking to the writing, it can be a little bit more challenging. We also recommend taking an example of your work that you think really embodies what you want to do or your work, and just looking at it or watching it or sitting in front of it and just describing what it is that you're seeing or experiencing using sensory active language. This can kind of help take it out of hypothetical and into some really kind of concrete examples. It's great for generating like rich descriptive language that actually speak to what it is that you make. And then last one here is like try talking instead. Like even if that's just sitting alone and hitting record on your phone and talking about the work in isolation, or describing it to a friend and recording yourself. And then the last thing I like to recommend is this is really helpful if you are struggling with the why specifically, in that sometimes I'll read artist statements and it's like all why or it's all concept. Then I look at the work and I'm like, I don't understand how the artistic decisions you're making translate to the why. And so for that, it can be helpful to kind of map it out in terms of here's the artistic decision that I'm making and here's why I'm making it. So if I were doing this for my work, I use a lot of like staircase references, staircases that look impossible to climb. And I'm doing that because they're a metaphor for endless striving. So that's kind of a way to mirror or to match the what to the why. If I were doing this for the work that we looked at earlier, Brigida Varadi is with the kind of the sheep wool-like texture. She's making an artistic decision to employ marks used by farmers to identify sheep. And the reason is that she's paying tribute to farmers' labor. So it's just kind of a helpful way to mirror, to match the what to the why. We are running a little bit short on time. So I have some do's and don'ts that I can get into, but I think I would like to pause before I do and just ask if there are any questions and prioritize those first. And I'm just gonna skip ahead here. Can come back to that if you're interested. But in summary, we talked about the artist statement as a 100-word paragraph that is essential for procuring artist opportunities, covers who you are, what you make, and why you make it, and it's meant to be a tool to communicate about you and contextualize your work. Um, and so, in summary, we kind of went through this process of practicing with someone else's work, trying the writing exercises that work for you. And then from there, you can compile a short paragraph, check for some do's and don'ts that I can speak to in a little bit or share after this. And then you're left with an art statement. So, with that, I ask, are there any questions?
I have a
And John,
question. Oh,
yeah,
go
no,
ahead.
yeah, I'm just asking for this part because people are going to talk. Maybe we can stop recording. Sure, yeah. Um, as part of the Immigrant Artist Program, we definitely offer different types of professional development opportunities. And one of them is the one-on-one consultation for immigrant artists. With funding available, the sessions could be available for free, which has been the case for the past 2 years. We are now in the process of looking for new fundings to make the session free. However, if you do have, fundings available for yourself, the session is still available for you to book. The session is complete online. Each session is 40 minutes, and we have industry expert have understanding of working with different artists from different disciplines who can speak Mandarin, English, Mandarin, Spanish, and French. The consultation themselves, they are all immigrants, and so they not only understand the language, they also understand the cultural context. So speaking about, right, if you want somebody to translate, it's always a good idea to have someone understand your cultural context. Each session now is $80 per session. And if we do hear some good news from funders that the session is, again, free to everyone, we will post that on our website. But I can drop that link in the chat if anybody is interested.
Great. Thank you, Yayun. Yeah, definitely recommend checking those out in the Immigrant Artist Mentoring Program, which Yayun also runs and is going to be accepting applications, I believe, in September. So as we come to the end of our time together, I just wanted to say thank you. And if you want to stay in touch with Yayun or I personally, this is our contact information. And to stay in touch with NYFA, you can find us on social media at NYFA Current, and would recommend subscribing to our newsletter where we make announcements for opportunities as they come up. And with that, it was really lovely to meet you all. Thank you so much for joining and spending an hour and a half with us and investing in your professional development. Thank you, Onwards, for the invitation and hosting us as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Yayun, for being here. This was such a wonderful overview of a complex topic. And I also want to let those of you who are on or listening to the recording that there's a great workshop that Kelly also facilitated about kind of taking time to construct an artistic practice, and how to balance all of the different responsibilities of your personal life with your perhaps other job, perhaps with your artistic practice, or whatever creative practice that you have. Posted on our website. There's a recording as well. And that was just last month, so you should find it pretty quickly there.